who's joining us. I feel like I have to do another intro because we just started the recording. But here we are. For some of you are joining for the Rooted Deeply program. Some of you are just interested in this 7-part series that we're going to do on spirituality and faith, and essentially rooted justice work for sustainability, right? How do we sustain ourselves in doing justice work from a rooted perspective? Like, how, that sort of that rooted, that I love that word, by the way, like being rooted and grounded, right? If anything COVID has done for us is it sort of boiled down a lot of the fluffiness in our lives and helped us to really focus on our rootedness. And some of us realized our roots are pretty terrible and dried up and crappy, like myself. And maybe some of you realized, hey, I'm pretty solid. Like, I'm loving this COVID thing. But that's going to be part of our conversation throughout the summer as we explore ourselves and our relationship with God and our relationship with others. Yeah. Judy, any more on that?
Yeah, I'm just excited to be with you all, and we'll be kind of listening in each week as different guests talk about 2 spiritual practices. A lot of them will feel like they might be things that are at odds with each other. And like, how do we do these 2 things? They feel different. What does it mean for us to be people who learn to get our roots deep down in good soil and all the good things that go, all the good gardening imagery of watering and feeding and growing. There's also going to be scripture opportunities if you want to study the Bible together. Your campus might have a small group, or there's a couple available for catch-alls too.
Yep. Yeah, Judy, that's a good point. I think for me in my journey with spiritual disciplines, I've always felt like, there's those 1 or 2 spiritual disciplines that if you do them, you're like a good Christian and you're sort of respected and honored. And I don't know if it's probably more like an unwritten sort of thing that's just I don't know, you learn from being around people unless you pray for 20 minutes every morning and read your Bible every night and journal for 30 minutes, then you're a bad Christian. I don't know. I feel like I'm getting old and I've never been able to do that. Not that I've never been able to do it, but I've just never been able to sustain that. Because I've had to realize that's just, I don't want to say that's not who I am, but it's just not part of my personality, right? I've had sort of ebbs and flows in my spiritual journey, and I've had different practices that have helped me at different points in my life, and I've shifted to some other ones, right? And oftentimes I think there are spiritual disciplines that are they do seem like they're at odds with one another, right? Today, our main conversation is going to be friendship and solitude, right? How do you have solitude if you're with a whole bunch of friends, right? Or how do you have intimate friendships if you're someone who loves solitude, right? But this is where we are. There's a lot of gray, I think, in spirituality and in how we can live our lives. And so that's what we're going to discuss. How do we live out both of these sort of realities? Yeah, that was my thought.
Yeah, I relate to that. I mean, I can't even do, some people are like Taco Tuesday and every Tuesday I eat tacos. I'm like, no, who wants to eat the same thing every Tuesday? And with my friends, we meet up in different places, or I'm married, my husband and I go on dates, do different kinds of dates and go different places. So yeah, with God too, I do different things and don't want to do the same thing every day.
Yep. That is me as well. And yeah, like Judy said, we're also recording this, and we're doing a 7-part series. So this is gonna be the first of 7. And the 7th one is going to be sort of wrapping everything up. And you can join us every week live, but if you're on vacation, you miss a week, no worries. We're going to record this so you can grab the video, or you can just grab the audio. We're going to try and send out the audio. It's summertime, so bear with us as we get things uploaded and onto a website or whatever. But we're thinking about the InterVarsity Mid-Atlantic website page would be a good landing place. You look at programs, there's a summer rooted one, and we'll try to have all the links sort of uploaded there. Also, #RootedJustly, follow that on Instagram. We'll try and throw things out on there for you to check it out. And if you have any friends that want to just join or are looking for we're hoping to have an hour sort of conversation, 20-minute conversation with some invited guests, and then Q&A afterwards. And so if you have any friends that want to just join in and listen to that like a podcast, or while they're driving or gardening, as I think I talked about earlier, that's some of our hope with that, to grab the audio. or the video. So whichever is your preference. Golly, okay, Judy, I'm gonna look at our notes, see if we missed anything.
Take a look, let me know.
Want to talk about how we're gonna engage this summer?
Yeah. So the hope is that this will actually feel like consistent community that we're coming to, right? People might miss weeks for vacation, like Captain said, but part of being a community means that we just have some agreements about how we're going to engage with each other. And if we were in person, we would have like a nice circle we would sit in and talk about this, but we have our Zoom circle. So so the first is we want to embrace and extend grace and truth to one another. The second is we want to engage with care. So engaging with care means like being present, not being distracted with too many other things going on in the background or trying to multitask while we're here in the space together. Listening well to each other is another way to engage with care. And also to not make assumptions, right? So like watch for language we might use of like, oh, that's weird or normal. Remember, like, we don't know everybody's history and story that's here. So engage with care as you type in the chat, as you unmute and share, and Captain and I will try to do the same. Also make and take space, right? So make space means be quick to listen and share the space, especially if taking space comes naturally to you, if you're 15 out of 10 extrovert, I saw that in the comments. Think about, how can you make space for other people and take space. If you're a little more hesitant to engage, think about opportunities that you might have where you could step in and share. Be a contributor in the conversation and not just consuming it. And then lastly is our like ouch and oops, right? There's gonna be moments where we're gonna like, oops, that came out the wrong way, or unfortunately it came out the right way, but it was not a helpful thing to say or type. So we want to have when these ouch and oops moments happen together as a community, we want to be quick to say that we're sorry and to make it right. Captain and I will do our best to model this in our own conversations, and we do invite you to push on us and challenge us when we need to do one of those engagement list items.
Yep, and Judy, I just was thinking, we're professional humans, right? So that means we fail a lot. So please be graceful with us too. We have a whole handful of guests that we've been inviting to join us throughout the summer, and we think you'll all love them and enjoy the conversations. And yeah, it's also summertime for us, as all of us in summer, right? So sort of summer mode, we get a little more relaxed and we try to do some more vacation things or life-giving things throughout the summer. So yeah, that's going to be part of it. And yeah, like we said, we're, invite people to join. We're going to do this recorded video and audio, so everyone should have access to that. Solid. Well,
yeah. Well, Captain, I want to we're going to ask all of our guests a particular question about who they are. So, who are you? Who are you?
Who's the captain? Captain's more of a nickname, by the way. I can share the story some other day.
Please do.
But yes, I am. Let's see. I'm a white guy living in North Philadelphia, just south of Temple's campus, in a predominantly African-American neighborhood. It's changing quite a bit right now. Married to a Black woman that grew up some in this house and across the street. This is her mother's house, so technically her grandmother's house, but her mother grew up in this house, and Jasmine, my wife, grew up in the house across the street. So her parents still live across the street. Her grandmother unfortunately passed away, but then gave the house on to Jasmine, and then I married her and moved in here. So I'm someone who I enjoy life. I think this, in many ways, spiritual disciplines has felt like they've held me back from enjoying life, but they've also been very life-giving, right? So it's like, how have I, on my journey, I've learned how to find some good spaces, also found some bad spaces. But yeah, so, having me be the one to have these conversations throughout the summer was probably a bad idea, but that's probably how we're all going to learn, right? From having these conversations with each other. learning from each of our mistakes and having good conversations. So yeah, that's a little about who I am. Judy, who would you say you are?
Ooh. That's a great question. Thanks. I thought about this ahead of time and still feel a little like, this is like so epic of a question, but so maybe we should just like answer it every week and see how it's morphing and changing. But I am a person who's trying and often like stumbling over my own feet to follow Jesus. I used to think that following Jesus would mean I was going to go lots of really like wild and exciting places, and more and more I'm learning that what it means is loving the people across the street, around the corner, and often in my own house with Christ-like love. I work with InterVarsity and I'm married. I have 2 kids and a dog, and there's a very good chance you will at least hear all of them at some point in the background and probably see Sam coming through. My daughter was just like under the closed door saying, "I love you, mommy." So maybe one day I'll like let her come in and say hi. So yeah, I like running most of the time. Sometimes I don't. If you're in Baltimore and you ever see me running, I get like very red faced and I look like I'm about to pass out. It's okay. And just please stop and say hi to me, because it gives me a good excuse to like take a breather. And yes, I am running with cicadas and it's disgusting. They like hit me in the face. And so now I'm running and huffing and puffing and like, screaming as I go. So that's a little bit of who I am.
That's wild. We don't really have those cicadas in Philly right now.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe next week I'll step outside for a minute, and those of you who don't have them around can hear them and take a look.
Lovely. Well, wonderful. Well, let's bring our guests on, Judy, huh? That'll be fun.
Yeah.
So tonight we have Gabe and Leslie. And they're not going to need much introduction because they're going to tell us who they are themselves. So let's see, Judy. Yep.
Yeah.
We're spotlighted. So Leslie, Gabe, who wants to start? Who are you?
I can go, I guess. I'm Gabriel. I'm a Chinese Asian American student. I'm not student anymore. Jeez. But I love to smile. One of the funniest things actually that happened when you guys were all coming into the room, back at UMBC, like everyone in the fellowship just made fun of me for being short. And so I thought Gabe Short was just like somebody's like idea of a joke, and I was like, oh my god, that's hilarious. But no, it's an actual person called Gabe Short that's here. Anyways, I love frisbee, I love football, I love sports, just like anything to do with a ball, anything to do with the competition. And yeah, I mean, I'm a lifelong fan of the Dallas Cowboys, so if you need to know about tough love and tough friendship, that's one right there. That's an abusive relationship. I can tell you that right now.
Nice. Thanks, Gabe. Leslie, who are you today?
Today, as if it was different yesterday. Let's see. A white man, married. I've been married for 3.5 years to my wife that I met in college. I graduated from UMBC in 2016 and then again in 2019, my master's. I've been a math major since I was 6. It's always my favorite subject in school, which maybe alienates a lot of you, but that's who I am. That's who I've always been. Like Gabe, I love sports. I love anything to do with sports. I love reading about sports, watching sports, playing sports, talking about sports. Yeah, that's me for now.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, both of you. So today we're talking about friendship and solitude. So yeah, what would the two of you say? How would you define friendship and solitude? Let's start with that. Let's just get a basic understanding of what is friendship. What do we mean by friendship? What do we mean by solitude? So thoughts?
I can go. For solitude, kind kind of the way that I'm sort of approaching it for this is it's kind of a time, you know, traditionally you think of it by yourself, but it's not necessarily, but it's sort of a time of intense thoughtfulness, sort of introspection into sort of who you are, what's going on, how you're feeling, things like that. So I am an introvert, and so this is kind of just my natural definition of that. Does sort of mean just by myself, but I think there are people that it's easier to do introspection with someone next to you. So I think that's kind of the way that I've been thinking about solitude for this is kind of just a really intentional, introspective, thoughtful state of being.
Nice.
Yeah, I would think of it very similarly. I think it's a time when you're just thinking of you're choosing to concentrate or focus on like one thing, and this doesn't necessarily have to be, as Leslie said, like by yourself. It's just like, oh, like this thing has been gnawing away at me for the past few weeks, past few years, or like, oh, like this part of me that I want to fix, or like I don't know like what to do. And it's just like a time that you can sit there and think about it and like almost like isolate that and choose to like intentionally chew on it, think about it, and just keep going with that, you know, like instead of just going like, oh, okay, well, I'll think about that another time. Like you're using that time to really say like, I'm going to work through this. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm going to work through this.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was just thinking like there are volumes and volumes of books on just solitude alone, right? So, but from what I hear each of you saying is that solitude seems like this time of purposeful reflection and like centeringness, gathering thoughts, emotions, collecting yourself, and even with maybe even having a specific thought or thing that you want to process going into the solitude time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, like lots of times, like when I'm by myself, it even gets like it's not that it's a bad thing, and like we're gonna answer some questions later or like talk a little bit about how like being by yourself is very useful for this. But one of the ideas that we wanted to get across was that solitude is not just an alone time thing. It's definitely something that you can do with somebody else. Some of the best times for me to process or to wrestle with something have been with someone else, and you can be like alone with another person. I don't know, like me and Leslie were talking about this before we came on, and lots of times Jesus goes by himself to pray. He'll take just himself, but lots of times he also took his disciples, you know. And so lots of times when we think about solitude, it's just like, oh, like I have to sit and wrestle with this by myself. But no, like friends are there for a reason. They're not just there to be away from you when you're not happy or you have to think about something. It's a great time for you to be able to sit down with someone and say like, hey, what do you think about this? And just think about that in an isolated space away from distractions, music, all these times where you like feel like you have to be funny or something. Just really have a time to sit down and chew through whatever issue you want to chew through.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, for me, I definitely land more extrovert, so having times of solitude has been painful for me. But I've noticed how it's really helpful, and like actually, I need to like practice that more, because I notice I learn a lot more about myself, about God, and other people when I have that space to sort of process and think through things. So. Well, let's flip it. What about friendship? What is meant by when we just say friendship?
I think for me, it's kind of a relationship that can sometimes come out of, or will probably usually come out of some sort of commonality, but then is sort of sustained through, just constant interaction and really just choice. You sort of, you've maybe met someone, you share something in common, maybe you can bond over that, and whether it's your personalities mix or you are in a class together or whatever, you're constantly in the same space. This sort of relationship is sort of sustained through choice. Both parties have sort of chosen into this, and continue it.
Yeah, like choosing to be intentional with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be anything mind-blowing for me to say that like there's different levels of friendship. Like obviously you're going to have deeper friends, you're going to have friends that you just kind of hang out with more. But I think that for like the context of this session, um, choice is the big word here. Not just like, oh, like deeper friends. No, when you are choosing to be engaged in a deep friendship, or when you are choosing to just like let things remain surface level. And surface level friends are completely fine, by the way. Like you do not need to have like mind-blowingly deep conversations with all 30 people that you know and see on a daily basis, right? That's just too tiring. Um, but like it's a choice. Like there are certain people that you're going to choose not to tell things to, and there are people that you're going to choose to like tell things to. So I think the important word for me in a friendship is definitely just choice.
Yeah, I like that. So tell me, how did that happen for you two?
Go ahead, Gabe.
Okay, so I was a freshman at UMBC, and every single like welcome week they call it, basically just like that first week and like a few days before classes start, they do all these like freshman activities. And I met someone at this movie on the quad, and they said like, "Oh yeah, like I know the small group leader in your freshman dorm. You should totally go meet them." And I was like, "Oh, that's a good idea." And so they were like, "Yeah, look for Leslie. I'll give you their number, and it'll be completely fine." And so I texted Leslie, and they were like, "Oh yeah, just meet me for lunch at D Hall." And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And so I don't know what to expect. I'm just like walking to the dining hall, and I'm looking for Leslie. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, Leslie is normally a girl's name. And so I was looking for a girl, and this like stoic 6'4" white boy walks up, and he's like, "Oh, are you Gabriel?" I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm like." I need to change my expectations a lot right now. And so afterwards, we just sat down and we had like the most, I think it was the most awkward lunch I've ever had. Leslie maintains to this day that it was not that awkward, but I just remember that like Leslie is not someone who's going to speak more words than he really needs to. Um, and I just like kept throwing out like all these like conversations, and I was just like flow of conversation for me is not something that just really happens. Sometimes I would just like think of something and bring it right in, and so I was like bouncing off all these places, and Leslie's like, "Yep." Like one word answers, and it was just like one word answers for like 30 for 40 minutes. I was like, "Oh, okay, well, that was awkward." So we went our separate ways, and then for the rest of that semester, he led a small group in my dorm, and he had it Monday nights. But my Chem 101 study group also met at 7 p.m. on Monday nights in the library. And so Leslie, like a good small group leader, at like, I don't know, like 6:30 or something, would sit in the lobby of my dorm room just waiting for his small group members, and he would go eat dinner with them. It's a very nice small group thing to do. But I would also be heading out of the dorm at the exact same time going to my study group. And so he'd just sit there and like look at me walking out. It's like, small group? I'm like, study group? We just passed by. So I just ghosted him like the entirety of first semester. And it was not until second semester that I think I remember like crew start. I was going to crew that first semester, and I think crew started earlier than IV for that second semester, and I overslept and I went to IV, and then I got hooked. So Leslie was the only person in the room I knew, so I went back and sat with him, and from then on, we've developed a very natural friendship over football, math, and just yeah.
Nice.
So can I just say a couple words in my defense? Because Gabe apparently pulls no punches when he tells this story. So first of all, I understand, and this is just a truth about me. Those of you that know me, I'm an introvert. Some would say that I'm even an awkward person in conversation. So I do not remember it being awkward at all. Not a single bit do I remember this being awkward. And I didn't even know that Gabe thought that was awkward until years later, when I heard Gabe tell the story of like commiserate with other people whom I had inflicted an awkward time with. So that I would just like to say that apparently this is just who I am as a person. That's what I should have said, is someone who, you know, inflicts awkward lunches on unsuspecting freshmen on an Ivy list. So
Leslie,
that's,
how would you say that your relationship went from this awkward space to actually more of a friendship?
so, well, so, I mean, it helped that I never thought it was awkward. But I would say, I don't know, Gabe is, I think in just the small amounts of time that I was able to have with Gabe over that first year, yeah, it was just really, I don't know. I was always blown away by, I mean, so Gabe and I are very similar in a lot of ways. We approach things, you know, very similarly. We think about things similarly. And so, you know, we had a lot in common, sports fans and things like that. So, but the primary time that we interacted was small group. And Gabe and I were, yeah, I really came to respect Gabe as a person. Just the more that I knew him, the more that I sort of had this deep and profound respect for him. I'm a couple years older than he is, but yeah, that's just kind of like, and so yeah, I was drawn to Gabe. The more I got to know Gabe, the more I was drawn to him, and the more I, you know, maybe in my head, I like to fashion myself as some sort of mentor, but I was really just drawn to Gabe. I really like Gabe. I've always had a really high opinion of Gabe. And yeah, the more that I get to, and so, you know, the more times we would interact at small group or at large group, you know, I notice a lot of things in Gabe that are just character traits that I really value. So yeah, I came to really, yeah, I really like Gabe. I've always really liked Gabe.
Cool. Gabe, so in your opinion, what was it that took you guys and your friendship to like the next level?
I think something that really helped me and Leslie a lot is that both of us are extremely real people. We've talked about everything from girls to anger to just everything. And I remember one of the first times Leslie was talking to me about this girl I liked my freshman year, actually. He told me something that I will never forget. I still tell people this whenever they are looking for advice. He said, everything is better when everyone knows everything. And it was just a really good stepping point for our friendship, I feel. Like everything is better when when the two of you in a relationship are just completely honest and open with each other. Like there's no point really in hiding things. It's like just be open and honest, like being real with someone, like opening up. I don't really remember it being hard, but like I know it's hard in my like next few relationships with like other friends where it's like it's hard to take that first step, but it just gets easier because when you're real with someone, they can be real with you. And Leslie has always been an extremely real mentor. He's always given me great advice. We think about things very similarly, but come at it from like very different perspectives at the same time. I love just like going for things and just I'm very energetic and just bouncing off the walls, but
yeah.
Leslie's a little more quiet and reserved, but it's very helpful to like balance each other out, I feel.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, so what I hear is you're talking about how it seems like each of you were persistent and committed in a way to continuing to have and maintain a relationship. And during that relationship, not only you just talk about football and stuff, but you actually like were straight up with each other and said some brutally honest things, it sounds like. So yeah, I guess, and I want to try and wrap us up a little bit, but I'm just wondering how does one get to that point, right? Like there's a way in which like I feel like you know, hey, yo, that person, I really appreciate them. They've got a lot of wisdom. I want to learn from them. But I feel like if I ask them to hang out with me, then I'll just be like draining them of their time. And they don't have time for me, and it's not going to be worth their time. Right. So, like, yeah, what sort of encouragements would you all give for like that sort of mentality?
I'm going to jump in here. I think, so one of the things that I mentioned at the beginning was choice. And I think, it's important for people to sort of choose, be intentional and choose things in a relationship. And I think one of the things that has helped me, and I've had a lot of relationships where this has worked, relationships where it hasn't, but definitely ones where it has, where I think it's important to not rule yourself out. Don't decide for the other person that they don't want to spend time with you. Don't decide for the other person that you're not worth their time. I have asked, I can maybe elaborate on the story later, but I've asked people just straight up, would you consider being a mentor of mine? And I had to be convinced to even ask them, and I had to be convinced to ask for meeting monthly with this person. I was going to ask for quarterly, but I was, I asked for monthly, and I meet with this person weekly now. It won't always happen like that. There will be times where people are too busy, but I think don't decide for them that you're not worth their time, because chances are, if you share.
Leslie, you straight up ask someone, hey, can I hang out with you monthly, like once a month?
No, I didn't ask, can we hang out? I asked, can you mentor me like once a month?
And they said,
he was like, yes. well, it turned into weekly, and then, or it was monthly, and then it was bi-weekly, but we weren't as consistent with on and off weeks. And so it just turned into weekly.
Nice.
And it's great. I have a phone call with him tomorrow.
Awesome.
So, but yes, I think, especially when you sort of bring Jesus into this, and you look at somebody who is following Jesus, the reality is that Jesus thinks you're worth their time. Jesus thinks you're worth his time. And you probably don't have to ask that many people that are following Jesus before you'll find someone who agrees with Jesus that you're worth their time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Gabe, did that bring up anything for you?
I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really understand the question actually. So when Leslie said I would jump in, I was like, cool.
I tried. What did I ask, Leslie? What was the question?
Sort of how do you get there when you see someone that you sort of like
right.
respect or wish that you were in some sort of friendship with? What happens?
I think just like, I remember one time when we were both so wrong, but it helped us grow together so much. Actually, it was like at Urbana 15, and there was this talk that happened. I don't remember on which night, but it was a big turning point for, at least for me, and I don't want to speak for Leslie, but I think for Leslie as well, in the ways that we thought about and talked about race. And so for us, like, we were just very angry, very turned off, and like I remember like we were talking to each other like, yeah, like this could have been better, this could have been better, but like talking about those things and then realizing like years later you're like, wow, we were so wrong back then. Just like it's nice to be able to look back and see how you've grown together, and like seeing where you were both wrong, where you've helped each other grow is always very, very cool.
Yeah, that's neat. Yeah, I think I've had friends who've sort of sought me out, and now there's like this underlying narrative of like, oh, if you ask someone to hang out with you, you're gonna like suck up all their time, and they're not gonna want to hang out with you, whatnot. You'll feel guilty for taking up their time. But I've realized whenever I've had someone like ask me to hang out with them, even if I'm like, well, who is this guy? I don't even know this dude. Like, why does he keep wanting to hang out with me? I've felt so appreciated and loved whenever they've said, hey, can we hang out? And some of them worked out and we've been friends for a long while. Others didn't work out so much. But a handful of the guys that did that with me, I was in their weddings. They were, at my wedding. It was like a lot of fun. And I've learned a lot from them. And it sounds like you two have had the same thing with your relationship. Awesome. Well, I'd love to bring Judy in. Judy, join us on the spotlight. And everyone, what sort of questions would you want to ask Leslie and Gabe? Just type it in the chat. And Judy and I are going to throw some questions at them right now for a couple minutes. And if you have any questions, throw it in the chat. We'll bring that up with them as well.
I'd like to jump in real quick while you guys can write questions and stuff. I feel like me and Leslie talked a lot about friendship, but not that much about solitude. And so something I wanted to make sure that I said was when you're alone or you're embracing solitude with someone else, feel free to just wrestle with it and just talk at each other. The example I used when I was talking with Captain about this actually was just two 5-year-olds. Remember, I don't know if you, oh man, I feel like I'm so old now, but I remember when I was 5, Google was not a thing, and so you're just two 5-year-olds arguing about why the sky is blue. Both of you are completely wrong. You're I don't know, someone took a marker, is no, I thought it was a crayon. I don't know, it's you're both completely wrong about this, but it's just nice to be able to embrace that time and spend time with each other and wrestle with it together. And when you're just both the two of you talking about it, feel free to check your sources and go look up stuff later, but
yeah,
it's important to not just consume,
Yep.
but also process, and processing with someone else is one of the most important things about solitude.
Yeah, that's good. And because I think there's a way in which some of those deeper questions of life are meant to be hashed out with other people and with God, right? Where sometimes we feel like if you ask too deep of a question, that's going to be really invasive towards someone, right? And they're going to feel really put off by that. But actually, it's both of you just trying to figure out life and figure out who God is and how God's interacting and why the sky is blue, right? Solid. We have a question come in from Greg. And yeah, he's talking about how do you create safe space before you begin having those conversations and being raw with each other, right? In some ways, it could be a mistake to be too open with someone and too vulnerable, right? So how do you know when the space is safe with someone? How'd that work for you guys?
I mean, I think one thing to do, so I'm a big proponent of being open. And so one of the things that is possible, to just talk about that, before you share anything sort of vulnerably, before you have to sort of bare your soul to this person, you can sort of ask hey, are we, what do we want this to look like? Do we want this to be a place? I would like for this to be a place where this is a thing. But if not that, don't sort of ask in a pressuring way, but I think it's, you can set that at first if you don't know the person, or if it's someone who you sort of, maybe admired or sought out as a mentor or something like that. Chances are it's probably going to be a pretty close, you have a pretty good bet. But again, you can always ask.
Yeah, maybe something oh, I've literally been stuck in my house for the last year. I just need a friend. Will you be my friend? Can we meet weekly? Come on, let's make it happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually specifically remember Leslie asked me questions like that, hey, you don't have to share if you don't want to, but do you mind me asking? And it's just you should definitely be thoughtful about who you share things with, right? Is the person trustworthy? Is this person someone who is going to give you good advice? Do these person's beliefs align with mine? And if they don't, even that can be valuable, but just use your judgment and be open and ask questions. So
yeah. That ties into the next question about, have you guys had meaningful relationships, either of you, with non-Christians, non-believers that you could share about? How do you approach those friendships or conversations differently, similarly? Yeah.
I can jump in. I'd say absolutely. I don't know if I approach the conversations like differently, as in like I know that like there are things that we won't agree on, but there's definitely meaningful conversations and different perspectives. And I feel like living or like having only Christian friends can actually be quite dangerous. I think that um, living in like your own like echo chamber-ish almost, like it's it doesn't give you a realistic perspective of the world. I don't know how to phrase it better. But I think that it's very important to see not just like, oh, like this is what an unbeliever thinks about this, but it's also like, what are ways that we as Christians are hurting people who are non-believers? Like, it's not something that you'll always get from another Christian. So like, just a different perspective to me is always extremely helpful.
Yep.
Amen.
That's cool.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, I think you can find different perspectives even within Christian spaces, but oftentimes I notice that like there are Christian circles that have like this like insider language that is like only used in like Christian circles and is sometimes not helpful to other people, right? So like it's even like how do we learn to communicate in a way that helps people and is like on the same level with everyone, right? If that makes any sense. So there's some Christian words, or we used to say Christianese, can almost be like another language. And so how do we learn to talk about like the sky being blue in very real terms that is relatable to anyone?
Hey, I have another question. How do you overcome rejection from friendships? Like maybe you've put yourself out there and said like, hey, do you want to be my friend? or you've had a friendship and then something has kind of gone awry. Yeah, how do you handle that? And yeah, advice.
I guess I would say, for a, especially in the situation where there was sort of a friendship that has kind of gone awry or has sort of maybe just faded with time. I think it, we talked a little bit about seasons at the beginning, and I think that can be a helpful way to sort of frame friendships. I've sought out friendships with people that I'm no longer really in communication with, and that like when I think about these people and it's sort of saddening. I wish I was better friends with these people. I wish I had done a better job. But I think it is okay. There are seasons, right? And there are people in your lives for different seasons, and some people in your life will sort of transition with you between seasons, but not everyone will. And that I think, I don't want to say handle rejection by handling rejection, but I think it can just be sort of a it is important to, now when you're sort of in this state where you can sort of maybe rationally think about it a little bit, and you can sort of think about like, hey, this is maybe okay. And, I can sort of see that, this is okay. And so when it happens and when there are feelings and when it hurts, maybe you've decided beforehand that it can help you prepare a little bit. It will still hurt. There's nothing I can say that will make it not hurt. But deciding beforehand that maybe you'll survive, that it will be okay.
And
eventually
give grace to yourself and to the other person too. Like, you don't always know what the other person might be going through. Maybe they actually just cannot handle having to like share with another person, an additional person, but giving that other person grace also gives yourself grace. It's not a reflection of your worth or your quality. It's just, sometimes we just don't know. And so just give grace.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, both of you. It's been great. Judy, I think we'll wrap up, huh? Thank you very much. Leslie, Gabe, can I pray for you all before we end our time with you? Excellent. Judy, you had, oh, okay, great. God, we thank you. We thank you for Leslie. Thank you for Gabe. Thank you for their relationship and the ups and the downs and the awkwardnesses that they've experienced with each other and pressed through to get to today, where they still can maintain a solid friendship with each other. So, thank you for all that they've learned about you, learned about themselves, and learned about each other through their relationship. God, and we thank you for all those moments of solitude that help them to sort of ground themselves and be steady in their relationship with you and relationship with each other. And so we thank you for this time and this conversation. We pray all this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
All righty, guys. Thanks for being with us.
Guys.
And I know we had, yep, thank you. I know we had a couple questions that we weren't able to get to, but yeah, it's been fun. And it was great to hear from Leslie and Gabe. Yeah, Judy, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm grateful for the honesty that you guys shared with. I often have that feeling of like, oh, I feel kind of lonely and I want deeper friendships, and we'll sometimes see somebody that I similarly admire and I'm like, can I just like ask them to be my friend? So I feel challenged and inspired. And speaking of challenge, each week we'll be practicing together a discipline that we've just talked about and learned about. So this week, we're inviting you all to practice with us, with Captain and I, building rooted friendships. I think, for each of us, that might mean something a little bit different. For some of us, it's like reaching out and saying like, hey, do you want to be my friend? For some people, there's actually a friendship we already have that we want to like invite deeper conversation. So the conversation doesn't end here, right? I'll post in a minute a link to a document that gives you a little bit, a very broad guidance on some rooted friendship ideas and questions to get your conversation started. And we're going to break into campus groups to chat a little bit tonight. But also next week when we come back, we'll start our time by checking in like, how's it going? So maybe there might be even some answers to the questions you've asked tonight that we might cover and share a little more communally, answer those at the start of next week.
Yep, and we'll also put the document up on the website too. So the website and the Rooted Justly Instagram page, you'll be able to find everything there. But yeah, I think Judy also, we were thinking that trying to encourage us into finding a rooted friendship that, someone that we can really be rooted with, was the space we need to press into right now. I think we've had plenty of solitude space over the last year, whether you wanted to or not. And there are lots of resources out there on finding solitude and getting into some rhythms of that. I encourage everyone to practice different rhythms. Some of you, solitude could be a daily thing that's really helpful. Sometimes it's good to have a weekly rhythm. Other times, like, hey, once a month, I'm gonna do this long walk by myself. I had a friend, every evening he would take a walk. He put some music in his ears and go for a walk around his neighborhood. And that was his space for decompress. That was his solitude space. For me, I get bored just walking around the same place every evening, right? Like, so that doesn't work for me. But I love like once a month having some time, go explore some new space and have some time alone, right? Like once a month, that's a great thing for me. Maybe a longer chunk. Maybe I'll do something like 2 hours or something for once a month. So yeah, those are good rhythms. But what we're going to challenge us is into that rooted friendship. And that is something we're thinking about weekly, right? If oftentimes I feel like, if you meet with someone every other week or once a month, like the semester's over like that, right? Because sometimes semesters go by real quickly. So we're going to encourage a weekly thing. We're just going to try it out for the summer. Yeah, I think those of you who signed up to join some of the small groups will kind of help with some of those pairings. If you don't have a small group, find a friend, ask them if they'll be your rooted friend for the summer, and try and start up some conversations. We got some ideas on that document that can help you start that up.
Yeah. Captain, before tonight, I was like, I know who my rooted friend is going to be. It's going to be Gideon, who's my husband. And I feel pretty challenged by Leslie and Gabe's story and how you guys shared. So I'm declaring it here and now. I'm actually going to message a friend and say, hopefully not too awkwardly, will you be my friend? and have these kinds of conversations. So y'all can ask me about it next week, okay? If anyone else is going to be brave with me, you can name it in the chat and I'll pray for you when I'm feeling a little scared and intimidated to text my friend. We're already friends, but yeah, Gideon would love to be your friend, Liam.
Well, Judy, I'm thinking about one of my friends that I talked to not too long ago. Good friend of mine from college. He was the guy that always continued to meet with me for lunch like once a week. And I kept being like, who's this dude? But being in his wedding was a lot of fun. He's got a whole pile of kids right now. And I still appreciate him. Every time I hang out with him, he always ends our conversation with, hey, how can I pray for you? And I've always appreciated that. But he's someone that I was thinking of, and there was a specific topic like, oh, I want to talk about scripture on this topic with him because I thought it'd be a really good conversation. I'd be able to learn something from him because he's been spending a lot of time pressing into that topic. So I think I'm going to ask him for that specifically, just to say, look, can we meet up a couple times throughout this summer just to unpack some scripture and you can help me understand and we can discuss. So yeah, that's how I'm going to go about it.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to ask you next Monday or follow up with you about it. So
yep.
Yeah.
But you know, those people with kids are sometimes harder to get in touch with.
Indeed.
He'll respond. I know he will.
He'll respond. He'll text back at least.
Yeah.
Who's this? Just kidding.
Solid. Well, we'll be here again next week live at 8 o'clock. And we hope you can join us live. If you can't, cool. We'll get the recording out to you. And both the video and the audio.
Yeah.
Same link, right, Judy?
Yeah. Yep.
Same link, but there'll be another email sent out.
Yeah, there'll be another email sent out with a link, and I think Kate maybe posted the table of contents for our landing page, and that's where we're going to keep posting all the links to everything. So like bookmark that, save it so you can find it again. Add it to your own Google Drive. Yeah, but I think now we're going to give some time in breakout rooms with your campus, so you can talk about like how does this impact you all with some people that you already know. Isn't that nice? So they probably already want to be your friends. But maybe they'll go a little deeper with each other. Yeah, so we'll send you there. Anything else, Captain?
It sounds great. It's good being with you all.
All right. Enjoy your time in your breakout spaces.